अंधेरी रातों में सुनसान राहों पर, अंधेरी रातों में सुनसान राहों पर हर जुल्म मिटाने को एक मसीहा निकलता है, जिसे लोग शहंशाह कहते हैं। अंधेरी रातों में सुनसान राहों पर, अंधेरी रातों में सुनसान राहों पर हर जुल्म मिटाने को एक मसीहा निकलता है, जिसे लोग शहंशाह कहते हैं। अंधेरी रातों में सुनसान राहों पर।
Power, privilege, potential. If we were playing a game of word association, these are the three words that would jump to my mind on hearing the word police. Power, of having the permission to enforce the law with necessary force, of making necessary choices. Privilege, to enjoy a certain immunity to the consequences of these choices. And potential, to truly do what the police were meant to do, to carry out the duty of maintaining law and order and preserving peace responsibly, to make the right choices, because, as we are all aware, with great power comes great responsibility. But are the police in India, or across the world for that matter, wielding the power bestowed upon them to the best of their potential? The police are, after all, the gatekeepers of law, कानून के रखवाले. That's one tough, intimidating job description. So what is the reality of the state of the police in our country? What is the idea of the police in our country? Our author today, Padma Shri Prakash Singh, will be enlightening us, and we will get to that very soon. Good evening, readers, and welcome to yet another thoroughly illuminating session of VLF. My name is Aditi, and it makes me very happy to see such an amazing turnout today. Let me start by introducing our V author. It is our ritual to present to you one author from Vidarbh at every run-up event. And today, we bring to you Dr. Sunanda Julme. An assistant professor at Kamla Nehru Mahavidyalaya, she is the author of the book Savitribaichi Charitra Gatha. She has brought alive the biography of Savitribai in a poetic form, a rare feat indeed. Sunanda, please tell us about your latest book.
स्त्री शिक्षणाच्या उद्गात्या आद्य शिक्षिका सावित्रीबाई फुले यांना मी प्रथम वंदन करते. या कार्यक्रमाचे उत्कृष्ट आयोजन करणारे सर्व आयोजक, उत्कृष्ट सूत्रसंचालन करणाऱ्या सूत्रसंचालिका, तसेच समोर उपस्थित सर्व चोखंदळ रसिक, अभ्यासक, वाचक, श्रोते मंडळी, सर्वांना माझा सस्नेह नमस्कार. मी डॉक्टर सुनंदा बोरकर जुलमे. मी कमला नेहरू महाविद्यालयात सहाय्यक प्राध्यापक आहे. मला या कार्यक्रमामध्ये माझ्या साहित्याची ओळख करून देण्याविषयी बोलवले, त्याबद्दल मी आयोजकांचे आभार व्यक्त करते. विद्यार्थी दशेपासूनच मला साहित्याच्या वाचनाची गोडी होती. पाठ्यपुस्तकातील कविता पाठ मी आवडीने वाचायची. तेव्हा पाठ केलेल्या कविता अजूनही मला आठवतात. तर तेव्हा लोकमत या वर्तमानपत्राची जी साहित्य जत्रा पुरवणी होती, त्या पुरवणीतले कथा, लेख, कविता मी आवडीने वाचायची. लोकमतचाच दिवाळी अंक मी वर्षभर पुन्हा पुन्हा वाचायची, कारण तेव्हा आमच्याकडे पुस्तकं लायब्ररीमधून घेऊन वाचायची ही संकल्पना वगैरे माहीतच नव्हती. त्या आणि वाचनाची आवड तर मग तेच पुन्हा पुन्हा वाचायचं. अशा प्रकारे वाचनाची आवड मी भागवत होते. मी ह्याच लोकमत दिवाळी अंकामधील कविता एक जी मला आवडली होती त्या कवितेचे अनुकरण करतच मी पहिली माझी कविता लिहिली होती. त्यानंतर मग बराच खंड पडला आणि नंतर मग मी माझ्या लिखाणाला सुरुवात केली. कविता हा माझा आवडीचा प्रांत, त्यामुळे अनुराधा पाटील औरंगाबादच्या प्रसिद्ध कवयित्री आहेत, त्यांच्या कवितांचा मी PhDच्या प्रबंधासाठी अभ्यास केला. आणि त्यानंतर मला नागपूरच्याच संकेत प्रकाशनातर्फे चरित्र लेखनाची संधी मिळाली. त्यात मी सावित्रीबाई फुल्यांचे चरित्र, गद्यात्मक चरित्र, त्यानंतर महाधम्मदानी सम्राट हर्षवर्धन, उपेक्षितांचा आद्य कवी संत चोखामेळा, विद्रोही संत कवी तुकाराम अशी संक्षिप्त चरित्रे लिहिली. या चरित्रांना वाचकांचा भरपूर प्रतिसादही मिळाला. क्रांतिज्योती सावित्रीबाई फुले हे माझे चरित्र तर ह्याची 3री आवृत्ती निघाली आहे. वाचकाचा प्रचंड प्रतिसाद मिळालेला आहे ह्या माझ्या पुस्तकाला. मी सावित्रीबाई फुल्यांवर 3-4 कडव्यांच्या अशा स्फुट कविता केल्या आणि त्या कवी संमेलनात म्हटल्या तेव्हा मला चांगली दादही मिळाली. तर सावित्रीबाई फुल्यांचे जे प्रेरक चरित्र आहे, त्यांचे जे खूप थोर असे कर्तृत्व आहे, ते जर आपण पद्यात्मक स्वरूपात मांडले तर ते गीताप्रमाणे गायले जाईल आणि खेड्यापाड्यामध्ये घरोघरी ते पोहोचेल असे मला वाटले. आणि त्यामुळे मी सावित्रीबाईंची चरित्रगाथा हे पद्यात्मक चरित्र लिहिले. हे पद्यात्मक चरित्र मराठी साहित्यामध्ये सावित्रीबाईंचे कदाचित पहिले पद्यात्मक चरित्र असावे असं अभ्यासकांचं मत आहे. मी अनुराधा पाटील यांच्या कवितांचे स्त्रीवादी आकलन हे PhDसाठी प्रबंध लिहिला. त्या प्रबंधाचे अनुराधा पाटील यांच्या कवितेचे स्त्रीवादी आकलन हे पुस्तक मी काढले 2021ला. या पुस्तकाच्या प्रकाशनाला प्रख्यात मार्क्सवादी विचारवंत साहित्यिक समीक्षक डॉक्टर V.S. जोग हे अध्यक्ष म्हणून लाभले होते. त्यांनी त्यांच्या अध्यक्ष भाषणात म्हटले की ह्या लेखिकेच्या सावित्रीबाईंची चरित्रगाथा या पद्यात्मक चरित्रामध्ये महाकाव्याची बीजं दडलेली आहेत. त्यांनी जरूर तसा प्रयत्न करावा, त्यांच्यामध्ये ती क्षमता आहे असं माझं कौतुक केलं. अशा छोट्या छोट्या कौतुकाने प्रेरित होऊन मी माझा लेखन प्रवास सुरू ठेवणार आहे. जवळपास 400 कडव्यांचे सावित्रीबाई फुल्यांची चरित्रगाथा हे पद्यात्मक चरित्र मी लिहिले आहे. या चरित्राचा आरंभ करताना मी म्हटले आहे, सावित्रीबाईंची गौरवगाथा, सावित्रीबाईंची गौरवगाथा, सावित्रीबाईंची गौरवगाथा, स्त्री उद्धाराची प्रेरक कथा कवर्ण रूपाने तुम्हा सांगते, ऐकून घ्यावी एकाग्रचित्ते. तसेच सावित्रीबाईंचे जे इन्स्पायरेबल कर्तृत्व आहे, त्यांचे थोर कार्य आहे, त्यांचे वीरमरण आहे, त्यांचा त्याग आहे, या सर्वांचा गौरव करताना मी म्हटले आहे, अशी ती होती वीरमर्दानी, अशी ती होती वीरमर्दानी, भारत भूला लाभे हिरकणी. अशी ती होती वीरमर्दानी, भारत भूला लाभे हिरकणी. जोवर आहे मानव जगती, स्मरण करुनी वंदन करती. तर अशा प्रकारे मी सावित्रीबाईंचे पद्यात्मक चरित्रगाथा आणि इतरही पुस्तकांचे लेखन केले आहे. त्यांचा परिचय मी आपल्याला दिलेला आहे. मी डिस्प्लेवर ती पुस्तकं ठेवली आहेत. आपण जरूर ती पुस्तकं वाचू शकता. मला आयोजकांनी इथे बोलण्याची संधी दिली. माझ्या साहित्याबद्दल मला 2 शब्द बोलता आले, त्याबद्दल मी आयोजकांचे आभार व्यक्त करते आणि थांबते. धन्यवाद.
Thank you for being here, Sunanda. Allow me to present to you our moderator for today, Advocate Ankita Sarkar. It is very heartening indeed to see Ankita owning the noble part of the legal profession. A legal strategy coordinator, she is part of the Fair Trial Fellowship, an initiative of Project 39A, wherein she works with the state legal aid machinery towards ensuring fair trial and quality legal representation for under trial prisoners. I'm delighted to present our author, Padma Shri Prakash Singh. A champion crusader and a true evangelist of police reforms, he has written 9 books till date. He has the unique distinction of having commanded 3 major police formations of the country. He was Chief of India's largest police force, Uttar Pradesh Police, Chief of Assam Police, and also Chief of the world's largest border guarding force, the Border Security Force. After an illustrious career highlighted by significant contribution to national security, for which he was awarded the Padma Shri in 1991, Mr. Singh devoted his post-retirement period to taking up public causes. As I'm sure all of you are aware, a petition filed by him in the Supreme Court for structural changes in the police led to a landmark judgment for police reforms in 2006. And readers, on top of all of that, he's not only super fit, but also super active on social media. Let's again have a big round of applause for Padma Shri Prakash Singh.
Good evening, sir. Pleasure meeting you. Hello to all of the readers as well. We are going to just start with, I guess, a conversation about you first, because before we go to the book, I would love to know a little bit more about you. I feel like kids today are really interested in being cops. There's so many movies that glorify policemen. There's Singham, there's all of Dabang. I mean, Salman Khan did it. Everyone has to do it. Were you one of those people as well who wanted to be a policeman when you were a child, or was it just a coincidence that you joined the force?
Frankly, I had no plan to join the police because nobody encouraged me, and there was no tradition in the family, so the thought of entering the police never crossed my mind. It just happened that after finishing my master's degree in history, because I had done well at that level, so the University of Allahabad took me as assistant professor. So I said, all right, it was a good opening, and I enjoyed my assignment as assistant professor. And at one stage I offered the university that, look, if you absorb me, I'm prepared to stay on. But you know, there was politics in the university in those days, and the head of the department wanted that Prakash Singh should go away so that he could induct his son in the department. So once I realized that they are not going to make me permanent, I said, well, then I have to sit for the civil services exam. I sat for the exam, and my intention was to sit for the entire spectrum of civil services, but something strange happened. See, those days there were 3 compulsory papers. I appeared for those. Then there were 2 papers for Indian Police Service. I appeared for those 2. Then the remaining 3rd paper would have made me eligible for central services, and 2 more papers would have made me eligible for IAS. But something strange happened. After I had appeared in the for the IPS papers, I came home and I told my mother, "Amma, बहुत थक गए हैं, हम थोड़ी देर आराम करेंगे." So we have a tradition of nature cure in our family. My mother said, ठीक है बेटे, लेट जाओ, सो जाओ, हम तुम्हें यहाँ मिट्टी की पट्टी लगा देते हैं आँख में. तो उन्होंने मिट्टी की पट्टी आँख में लगा दी. But you see, nature cure remedies have, they sort of, if there is any problem, they sort of resurrect that. And once I got up, I felt there's something wrong with my eyes. And when I looked at the mirror, I found my eyes were blood red. ये क्या मुसीबत आ गई, मैंने कहा ये तो खैर. And I was not able to read or write. Then I went to the best eye specialist in Allahabad. He treated me, but I was still not able to read or write for more than 5 minutes. I said, then I could not appear in the remaining papers. And then to my great surprise, I have no hesitation in saying, to my great surprise, I found that I had topped in the Indian Police Service. मैंने कहा, this was, मैंने कहा, then somehow I felt that the way things have happened, not being able to appear in the papers and then figuring at the top in the examination result, I thought it was God's wish that I should be joining the police, and so I joined the Indian Police Service. That's how I joined the police service. And then my nature is that whatever I do, I must excel in that. So once I knew that I'm in the police, I knew I have to excel there. But the initial years were not very promising. I mean, first few years I said, ये नौकरी तो मतलब ठीक नहीं लग रही है. And I used to tell my wife, मैं सोचता हूँ resign करके फिर से चलें कहीं पढ़ाने की नौकरी की जाए. That kind of feeling I had. But my wife prevailed upon me, no, don't be in a hurry to resign after, you don't get selected for all India services just like that. So just give it some more time. And then as I found myself in a theatre where, in Nagaland, at the very start of my career, I got tossed to Nagaland and doing whatever I did there, I felt that I was contributing to upholding the national interest in a very sensitive area of the country, and that provided me with motivation to stay on. So, and then as life turned out, I do not know how, not that I planned it that way, but I got thrown into one turbulent theatre after another. It doesn't happen mostly with people, but it happened with me. I mean, I was in Nagaland, then I went to Punjab, and I went to these theatres when these theatres were at the peak of insurgency or terrorism, you can say. So, I mean, serving in police, I felt that I was doing something for the country, even if it was very hazardous, even if it was full of dangerous possibilities. And that gave me satisfaction that you are doing something for the country, you stay on. And then, I mean, the higher I went, I felt that I think I must, you see, as superintendent of police, if the district population is say about 25-30 lakhs, which is the normal population those days in UP, I used to think that, look, these 25-30 lakhs people are looking up to you for protection of their life, their property, their honor. Why don't you do that? I mean, it's a great opportunity. I mean, it's some kind of a social service. So that kept on motivating me, that here is an opportunity for me to serve the society and the country. And so that's how, I mean, and then I stayed on in the police.
That's a very interesting thing you said, sir, because I lead a very small team. So like I lead a team of like 10 lawyers and social workers. And even in that capacity, a lot of times I think the next thing that I wanted to ask is, if I want to do good, should I ruffle feathers?
Should I?
Ruffle feathers. Should I upset anyone? Should I upset the powers that be? Because I'm also thinking about like, oh no, but my team should be able to excel. Everyone who's under me should be able to do well. So where did this part come in where you were like, okay, I want to be an inspiration to all these people. I want to be motivated to stay in the force as well. But I want to be one of those people who also changes it from the inside. So where did this entire issue of reformation in the police structure come for you?
You see, ruffling feathers, it just happened. I mean, not that I was seeking to pick up issues or have quarrels with my seniors, but I mean, I am what I am. And I had some sanskar, and my father had given me certain values, and somehow, rightly or wrongly, but I was uncompromising from the very start, that I will not compromise on values, I will not do wrong things. And I am here to uphold the rule of law. I am here to uphold the interests of the society and the country. And that I will do. And if you treat me like a gentleman, I am a gentleman. But don't try to bully me, don't try to be funny with me, don't try to take liberties with me, and don't ask me to do things which would be against my conscience, because that I will never do. So this kind of uncompromising attitude landed me into situations throughout my career, because as I have recorded in my book also, I was a middle-level officer and I was having a discussion with the Home Secretary Government of UP on some issue. I mean, why am I not being supported in this by the government? And the Home Secretary, he got exasperated. He found that I am not listening to his arguments. Then he threw what he thought was the Brahmastra from his side. He said, Prakash, you don't understand. Who wants an honest police officer? No, he himself was an honest bureaucrat. He told me, who wants an honest police officer? That word, I mean, kept on ringing in my mind. Who wants an honest police officer? And then I said, how do I get along then? But I mean, as I said, I was uncompromising. No, I will not change. So I ruffled feathers in Meerut. I ruffled feathers as Director General Police UP. I ruffled feathers as DGP Assam. And the results, I mean, the inevitable happened. I was disgraced as DIG Meerut. And no less a person than the Home Minister of India said that Prakash Singh should be placed under suspension. Home Minister of India, not Home Minister of UP. And I mean, that was a very traumatic period for me, that you are carrying out a campaign against the corrupt subordinates. And these corrupt subordinates go and poison the ears of the Home Minister's wife, and then it is conveyed to them that, look, this officer is anti-Jat. That was the charge leveled against me, because so many Jat inspectors in charge were demolished by me. So, I mean, the Home Minister of India, a man of great competence, but जिसे कहते हैं कान के कच्चे थे, तो he believed in it and he said, no, throw him out. And the Chief Minister of UP was his protege, Ram Naresh Yadav. So he telephonically said, place him under suspension. But those days the bureaucrats had more spine than they have these days. And when the orders of my suspension were given to the Chief Secretary along with the Home Secretary went to the Chief Minister and said, sir, we can't suspend him just like that. There has to be some charge against him. So he took out a piece of paper which he already had in his pocket and he said, look, these are the charges. No, they read the paper and they knew by their experience that these are fictitious charges. But they said, sir, this will have to be inquired into. And then alone we can, once the preliminary inquiry is completed, then alone we can suspend him. So the Chief Minister said, all right, but you complete the inquiry within 1 week. The inquiry was entrusted to anti-corruption. They conducted the inquiry, they found everything was false. They gave me clearance. Now the government didn't know what to do. Meanwhile, I mean, providentially I would say, I had been nominated for a course in Australia and the course came through. I quietly packed my bags and left for Australia for 2 months, and that was a period when I think out of sight, out of mind. By the time I came back, things had cooled down. So that was the first major problem. Then as DGP UP also, I mean, it's a long story, I don't know how. DGP UP, I mean, I was again found myself on the wrong side of politicians, although the Chief Minister was boasting all along कि हमने प्रदेश में दंगा रहित प्रदेश, भयमुक्त समाज और दंगा रहित प्रदेश स्थापित किया है. This was the boast of the Chief Minister UP. And how do you establish danga rahit pradesh and how do you achieve bhayamukt samaj? I mean, it's only if the police is effective. And we were effective. In fact, my tenure was the first and absolutely the first time in UP, a relentless campaign against the mafia was carried out. A more brutal campaign has been carried out today, but the difference is that in 91, the campaign was carried out at my initiative. Today it is being carried out by at Yogi Adityanath's initiative. That is the only difference. So I carried out a relentless campaign against, and things were really good. For the first time, a lot of change was noticed in UP. In fact, one article which I have referred to, I mean, he summed up my period in UP by the caption. He said, Uttar Pradesh mein Prakash ki Kiran. That was the title of the article they wrote. So, but politically they found me inconvenient. So they said, no, the Home Secretary was annoyed with me because the general impression was that no order of the Home Department would be carried out unless it was approved by the GDP himself. I would not carry out orders which I thought were against public interest. Jo karna ho karo. I was very clear on that. I would not carry out any orders against public interest. And of course, I would get them changed also. I would keep them on a separate shelf. And then whenever I got time to meet the Chief Minister of the state, and those were generally midnight sessions. He would call me at, say, 9 o'clock, but our discussions would start at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. and go on till past midnight. And I would produce those files. Sir, is pe ye adesh aaya hai, which is wrong for reasons A, B, C, D. So he would say, he would in 90% of the cases agree with me, and he said, आप लिख के भेज दीजिए Home Department को कि इसको हमने Chief Minister से discuss कर लिया और इसको वापस किया जाए. So I mean, the Home Department was very annoyed with me, but he doesn't carry out our orders. The Secretary to Chief Minister was also annoyed with me because he had leaked out a report on which I got a FIR registered, and people knew that Prakash Singh का कोई ठिकाना नहीं है. ये शायद Principal Secretary to Chief Minister को भी गिरफ्तार कर सकते हैं. So there were tremors in the Secretariat कि भाई Chief Secretary हमारा गिरफ्तार हो जाएगा, Home Secretary अलग. So Home Secretary, Chief Secretary, and politically I had become inconvenient. So one day I am called by the Chief Minister and given, you should hand over charge. I said, मैंने उनसे हिंदी में कहा कि आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आपने मुझे प्रदेश की सेवा करने का मौका दिया, पर अब मैं इंडियन पुलिस सर्विस में सेवा नहीं करूँगा, मुझे छुट्टी दे दीजिए और उसके बाद मैं अपना इस्तीफ़ा भेज दूँगा। मैंने कहा, I felt very bad. I mean, after, say, 34 years of service, I felt that now this is the end of my career. I said, I'm going to resign. I'm not going to serve in the police now. I mean, after all that I have done for the state, this is the kind of treatment you are giving me. And publicly it came in papers, Shri Prakash Singh apne istifa de denge, or I went to my private residence. But then destiny had something else in store for me. Babri Masjid was demolished. The state government was dismissed. The state was on fire. Communal riots had broken out. Central government imposed president's rule. Then again they were looking for a DGP who would be able to restore law and order in UP. So they said, "Bhai Prakash Singh ko wapas bulao." So I got a second innings as DGP, and I had to sort of, with the eventuality to submit resignation did not arise. So that's how. So similarly in Assam also, I won't go into Assam episode because I think it will take too much of time. But I kept on running into problems because of my uncompromising attitude. But I think at the end of it, now when I sit quietly and ponder over the days gone by, I think there was some divine force which was protecting me, which was guiding me, and which sort of kept on, I kept on bouncing back without any godfathers, let me assure you, without any godfathers. If at all, I think I had God on my side rather than any godfather. So I kept on bouncing back. As DGP, I was rehabilitated, and so wherever I was thrown out, then I found myself rehabilitated very soon. And then I had a good innings as Director General VSF, and no problem there, because in VSF you don't have much of, you don't have interaction with politicians. You are on your own and you are defending the borders where there is not much of politics. So that's how ruffling feathers is not my forte, but when it's a clash of principles, I would be uncompromising. I would be uncompromising.
So before we go to the discussion on the book, I would like to know, like most of us get our legal news, of course as a lawyer I have a different source, but most of us get our legal news on probably like Live Law, Legally India. That's where we get most of our news, especially if like there are landmark PILs. But of course, like reading this book was a very interesting insight into how this case played out, because it was like almost over a decade of litigation. So why is it that instead of finding it out from like some online legal portal, there's a book about it? Why this book?
You see, at the end of my service, I felt that there's something seriously wrong with the police department. But because when you are trying to do things the right way, when you are trying to uphold the rule of law, when you are, I'm sorry, but when you are incorruptible, then why is it that you have to run into problems, and why is it that you are threatened with suspension and you are disgraced and humiliated and all that I have to go through? I kept on thinking over it. There is something wrong with the police. So, and I felt that now that I have retired, I need to do something, whatever I can do to rectify matters, so that at least future generations of police officers don't have to suffer this trauma and this difficult dilemma. I went through all the police commission reports, and especially the National Police Commission report, and then I said that no, the problem is because you are under the thumb of the executive. And the executive wants, when you don't carry out the wishes and the dictates of the executive, they have the power to transfer you, they have the power to suspend you, they have all the administrative powers to make your life miserable. So I said, this power has to be curtailed. You can't sort of remove this power, but it has to be, they should be compelled to act within the framework of certain laws and procedures whereby a good officer working with the best of intentions does not get punished. So I went through, I prepared a PIL on the basis of National Police Commission recommendations. I picked up certain points which I thought would constitute the core of the issue. But with police there are a whole lot of issues. You talked of privilege, you talked of potential and all that. But if you talk of police problems, there are a whole lot of problems that we have. So I picked up those issues which you can say touch the heart of the problem. If you have a heart problem, then it's really bad. I mean, then your life is in danger. If you have some problem in your arms or your nose or ears, you can take care of that. But if you have a heart problem, then it's something serious. So I picked up those matters which I thought touched the heart of the police problem, and on that basis I prepared a PIL of 7 prayers. Then the next thing was, how do I get an advocate? Because I don't have lots of money. I have only hard-earned money. I can't afford to pay the lawyer. So they said, you get somebody who is prepared to do pro bono. I got in touch with Prashant Bhushan. He was disinclined to take up the PIL because he was very anti-police. He said, no, police are doing all wrong things and they don't deserve any sympathy. I can't plead the case of police. I had a long session with him. I said, look, why are these wrong things being done? You need to understand that. There are certain constraints under which the police officers function. We need to remove those constraints. Unless we remove those constraints, police will not measure up to our expectations. And see, if you analyze the profile of police officers across the country, you will find that the most educated and the most qualified police officers in the world are to be found in India. You have IIM graduates, you have IIT graduates, you have doctors, you have engineers, you have officers who have excelled in humanities. They all want to, it is from this crop that we get officers for the Indian Police Service. And a lot of them start with ideals that we have to serve the country, we have improved. How is it that they all get into a rut? Because they find the circumstances around them so compelling, so strong that they also get swept off their feet and they say, oh, you swim along with the current. So, all that I explained to Prashant Bhushan and ultimately he agreed. But frankly, if that stage somebody had told me that, look Prakash, this is going to be an endless struggle and it will go on for 25, 26 years and even then at the end of 26 years, the end may not be visible. If somebody had told me at that stage, probably I may not have gone to the Supreme Court. But having gone to the Supreme Court and having taken up the issue, my problem again is my nature. If once I have taken up an issue and I'm convinced that it's a legitimate cause, it's a justified cause, it's needed for society, it's needed for police, it is relevant, it is urgent, I will not give it up. Whatever time it takes, let it take. So it has taken me 26. It took me 10 years to get the judgment on the PIL. Then I thought, all right, 10 years, up to khatam, another 3-4 years, I will be through with this. But this is, implementation is turning out to be even more torturous because for reasons which we'll discuss later, but implementation, and it has already taken me 26 years. So that's how it is. That's how it is.
So coming to the book, so I just wanted to start with the first part of it. It outlines in detail about the history of what the indigenous police was in India, how it was motivated as or thought of as a people's police, and at least the higher ideals that were upheld were towards the service of the civic body. However, of course, you outline in great detail about after the British Raj, it became a very imperialist serving organization. It became subservient, it became problematic, corrupt, and it turned into that culture of serving a higher master, which the police was not in its indigenous state. There is some discussion, I feel, in the book about why post-independence, even though the Constituent Assembly genuinely believed the best intentions of the police, we did not bounce back. We remained that ruler's police as an organization. So I would like to know a little from you why you think, at least initially, that when the best intention was granted to the police organization, we had hoped that post-democracy things would drastically change. We would not, the organization would not remain so subservient to an imperialist Raj. Why did that not change, and why do we have these problems even to this date where it's a ruler's police?
You see, I'll start with 1857. Going back would take a long time, but let's start with 1857. That is the time when we had a revolt across the country, and that is the time when the foundations of the British rule, East India Company rule at that time, were shaken. And after that, the Crown took over. Now, they felt that they need a police force which would be at their beck and call, which would enable them maintain their imperial authority over India, and on which they can fully depend. So that is the background in which police was formed. If you go through the minutes of discussions preceding the formulation of the Act of 1861, they talk of a politically useful, quote unquote, politically useful police. So they wanted to have a police which would be politically useful. Now, I don't blame the British for it, but they were an imperial power. They wanted a politically useful police, a police which would enable them retain their hold over the Indian subcontinent. So that is how the Act of 1861 was formulated, which placed police completely under the control of the executive. I say I don't blame the British, because their objective was different. Their objective was to maintain their imperial authority over India. So that is the kind of act which was formulated, and although subsequently even the British found that this act was a flawed act, a flawed legislation, and the police commission, which was formed in 1902-1903, it's also known as Fraser Commission, they recorded something about the police, which if I were to read you the excerpts from it, you will feel that it was perhaps recorded yesterday. What was true in 1902 is true even today. They said that the police force is inefficient, it is corrupt, it does not enjoy the confidence of the people, it is inadequately supervised, etc., etc. This is what they said. But very interestingly, the last sentence is, and therefore radical reforms are urgently necessary. This was said as far back as 1903. But they pointed out all the faults in the police which they noticed. Faults which are true even today and which apply even today. Maybe a fortiori with greater force. Now that was in 1902. But no reforms were carried out. In 1947, we become independent. At that time, I think a great opportunity was missed. I mean, we had great leaders at that time, very enlightened people, but they felt that now that it will be Indian police and Indian leaders, so they would work with a different ethos, with a different attitude, with different principles, with a different motivation. And for you can say almost about 3 decades, their hopes were not belied. We had the first generations of police officers were people who were imbued with nationalistic ideas, who wanted to do good for the country, who had certain basic values, and the leaders and the politicians were also, by and large, good people. But gradually, as politics started took a nosedive, and that became evident in 1975 when the emergency was declared. For the first time, where we realized that things have gone horribly wrong. And the Shah Commission later on recorded in its detailed reports, I mean, for example, they say that the police were used for purposes they are not meant, and they acted as if they are not accountable to anyone, etc., etc. And then at the end of it, they say that if a recurrence of such incidents is to be avoided, the police must be insulated from all kinds of external pressures. This was what the Shah Commission said. What happened during emergency, you all know, false cases were slapped against all members of the opposition party. You may have committed a crime or not committed a crime, but I mean, I remember I had just started my career in UP, and we got a standard format of an FIR. इस तरह की FIR जिसको कुछ नहीं समझ में आता चिपका दो सबको और बंद करो उसको अंदर भेजो. A whole lot of people got arrested for no fault of theirs, and press was censored. So many other excesses happened, details of which you would be broadly aware of. So then for the first time we realized that no, this system can be manipulated by politicians and it can be completely misused and abused by politicians. That was the first time we realized that no, the police as it is, it can be completely manipulated by the politicians. But even then, you see, changes did not happen, and then in '84 another gruesome tragedy overtook the nation when anti-Sikh riots took place in Delhi and about 3,000 Sikhs were massacred. So again, the pain was there and people knew what is wrong, because people who were sort of destroying property, killing people, on people who were on rampage in Delhi, they belonged to the ruling party. So the police just did not take action against them because they are members of the ruling party. How can we take action against them? So that was another tragedy which happened. So, but unfortunately, the talk of reform had meanwhile started, because during the soon after the emergency, government appointed the Shah Commission, and Shah Commission said that no, this kind of policing, this kind of police system that we have is wrong, and we need to change it, we need to insulate it from outside pressures. And then in the wake of that, the National Police Commission was appointed. It was headed by an ICS officer, a former governor, and there were experts from different fields, and of course their police officers were there. They produced very comprehensive reports between 1977 and in fact, between 79 and 81, they produced 8 volumes of reports, which are absolutely fantastic, I would say. They are some kind of a magnum opus for the police, and even today, whenever we have a problem, we refer to the Police Commission reports. Of course, some of them have become out of date, but even then, most of them are valid. Whatever they have said then is valid even today, you see. So, Police Commission gave its recommendations for reforms in police, comprehensive reforms, but by the time the Police Commission reports came out, Indira Gandhi was back in the saddle, and she said nothing doing, because the basis of Shah Commission was excesses by Mrs. Gandhi, and therefore Mrs. Gandhi was not inclined to accept the recommendations of the National Police Commission. But the central government had to put up a show. Central government forwarded the NPC recommendations to all the state governments, but the forwarding letter said, the government of India does not agree with paragraph this of the National Police Commission recommendations. However, the report is being sent to you for appropriate follow-up action. Now, the states governments got the message that the central government itself is not convinced about the National Police Commission reports, and so they did nothing about it. So,
sir, I'm just going to pause for a second over there. I just have a follow-up question to that only, so I'll include it in this part. You spoke about the NPC Commission, NPC reports, and also some parts of, I think our readers will eventually, when they come across, or if you've read it, there's also the Model Police Act, Sarabji Committee report, Rivera Committee report. So there are all of these various guidelines that were put together from time to time, and you say they are like very valid. A lot of them are like extremely useful and relevant even today. However, one interesting thing that I found in the book was that you mentioned that a lot of smaller states did excellent with implementation.
A lot of?
Smaller states. Arunachal, Mizoram did well with implementation. So like in follow-up to this thing about like, there was a point when central government was not convinced, so states did not take accountability. When states were asked to take accountability by the PIL, as a result of the PIL, I would also like you to talk about why you think that larger states, and unfortunately Maharashtra happens to be one of those, right? It mentions that, in fact, the state took no accountability. They said that, no, this is contrary to what our legislation is, we will not be able to implement it, right? So I would like you to throw some light on this fact as well, as to why so many smaller states with like, which you would think would not be that reform oriented, did so well with the reforms and implementing the guidelines, whereas a larger state with bigger law and order force failed so miserably.
So now we have come, she has brought me to the implementation stage. We have missed a few years in between, but anyway, I think the constraint of time has to be kept in view. Now, when the question of implementation came, the first response of the state governments was generally defiant attitude. Some of them said this is against the constitution of the country, and this would and this is against the federal arrangement that we have today, etc., etc. And we found that the bigger the state, the more defined was the attitude. I mean, Maharashtra, of course. Maharashtra has been one of the defined states to this day. And you are, on the wrong side of Supreme Court directions. Same applies to UP. Same applied to Andhra Pradesh, undivided Andhra Pradesh also. But the divided Andhra Pradesh has fallen in line gradually. Telangana is still very defined. The smaller states, I would say Manipur, Nagaland, Mizoram, I would say these states, you may be having insurgencies there, you may be having a violent rebellion there, but the governments there are in awe of the Supreme Court. कि भाई ये Supreme Court से आया, इसमें कुछ करना है. The first state to comply with the directions was in fact Arunachal Pradesh. They were absolutely the first, and they just promptly complied with the directions. So my point, what I have written in the book is, and this is what she mentioned, that the smaller the state, the more compliant they were, and the bigger the state, the greater the dadagiri, you can say. कि भाई हम तो भाई बड़े स्टेट हैं, हम जो मर्जी होगा कर लेंगे, etc. Attitude of some states has changed. Odisha, for example, Odisha, if you read their affidavits, you see I have crates and crates of papers of their affidavits, which they kept on submitting year after year. If you read the first affidavit of Odisha state, they say, no, it's a very good thing that the Supreme Court has done and we'll follow the Supreme Court direction. But if you read 5-6 years later, oh, they have taken a different line altogether, and they're also non-compliant. So, the bigger the state, I would say they think we have more power, we have more resources, we are a big state, we can afford to take panga with the central government. That I think is the psychology behind the bigger states. And Bihar, of course, was the most brilliant state. उन्होंने सोचा कि भाई ये इसका compliance तो हमको करना नहीं है, पर क्या किया जाए? You know what they did? The judgment had a paragraph which said that, you see, the Supreme Court, let's be clear about one thing. The Supreme Court can fill a legislative vacuum, but it cannot legislate. So because there was a legislative vacuum, so the Supreme Court said that these directions are issued till such time as the central state governments enact their own laws on the subject. Now, Bihar was the first to pick up this particular portion. They said, अगर जल्दी से एक्ट बना दिया जाए तो फिर मामला खत्म. Then there will be no supervision of the Supreme Court, because it is till enactment. So, all right, we are passing a law. Bihar was the first to pass a police act, and which is the worst police act passed by any state in the country. In fact, one Bihar police officer wrote to me that, sir, we have gone back not to the British days, but to the East India Company days now. And that law is still there in their statute book. Now, taking the cue from Bihar, several other states also, one by one, have passed laws essentially to give legal cover to the existing arrangement on the ground. So, they have passed laws. They say these laws are being passed in compliance of Supreme Court directions. But actually the laws have been passed to circumvent the implementation of Supreme Court directions, because they say now the law has been passed, so the Supreme Court need not monitor our acts. But then I would not let them go like that also. So I said, this is very funny. You can't pass laws which are totally against the letter and Supreme Court's directions. So I prepared another petition which Mr. Harish Salve filed. This one was filed by Harish Salve. That all these laws should be declared ultra vires. But somehow the Supreme Court has not had many hearings of that. That is still pending before the Supreme Court, that laws passed by the states in violation of the Supreme Court direction should be declared ultra vires. That is still pending before the Supreme Court, and no hearing has taken place for the last 7-8 years of this particular PIL. because Harish Salve also lost his interest. I mean, he is now, most of the time he is staying in London and I'm not able to communicate with him and he's not able to pursue the matter. I'll have to, maybe if the Supreme Court shows interest, I'll find some other lawyer.
It's very interesting that when we talk about like in terms of police reforms, there's one part of the book that talks about how it's the most bipartisan issue. Because both the BJP and Congress election manifesto had spoken about some part of police reforms. So it's not a thing where it's your political leaning, so to say, affects the idea of upholding the need for police reforms. It seems to be a very bipartisan issue. However, the most clear idea that I get out of reading this book is that the criminals, the bureaucracy / politicians and the police are the trifecta that creates all the hurdles in actually bringing about reformation. So I would like to know your thoughts on why, if it is such an issue that every party wants to bring forth, we are having so much trouble with actually working it out.
See, on the eve of elections, now willy-nilly some political parties have been mentioning, rather half-heartedly though, the subject of police reforms. But once they are voted to power, they forget that part of the manifesto. Firstly, it's a very half-hearted mention. And once they are in power, nobody follows it. I mean, when they are in the opposition, they suffer. I mean, for example, today I would say in West Bengal, BJP is suffering. Their cadres are beaten up, their cases are slapped against them, their houses are burned. At the ground level, a lot of atrocities are committed. And after the last West Bengal assembly elections, whosoever had voted for BJP got the rough end of the stick from the Trinamool workers. So BJP has really suffered. I mean, suffered in the brutal sense of the word, not on paper. So they all suffer when they are in opposition. Even in Punjab, you saw, I mean, Prime Minister's security being trifled with when he had gone, when he was going towards Firozpur. So all kinds of things happen. But once, I mean, they are always, I think, waiting for the day when they will be in power and they will be able to misuse the same agencies. We have yet to learn the lesson that no, this is not on, and if and when you get into power, this thing should be reformed, this thing should be changed, and such abuse of police should not be possible by any party in power. So when that kind of enlightenment has yet to dawn on the politicians, and unfortunately the chances of that kind of enlightenment happening, I do not know whether they are there, because when you look at their background and you look at the reports prepared by the Association of Democratic Reforms, see, on date 43% people, and if you go 4 elections behind, it started from 23, then 30, then 33, then now it is 43. At different elections, that is how the graph has been. I mean, the graph is steadily going up of people of questionable background, and I'm using a very polite expression, questionable background being in the parliament. And with 43% persons of questionable background in parliament, what do you expect from those group of people? What do you expect from them? Tears for the poor? Yes, crocodile tears maybe. But no genuine concern for the poor or tribals. Even the Forest Rights Act is being trampled upon by the new set of regulations. So, I mean, we have in power people whose heart, does it beat for the country or does it beat for their clan, their tribe, their region and their own family? That is the big question.
So another thing that I wanted to think out of, like maybe not in relation to the book, but we can't also think about the police as a monolith, because of course, as a monolith. So basically everyone is going to, it's all, at the end of the day they are all people, right? So they are also going to have their own politics and their own belief system, things that they think should be justified, things that they think like maybe the government or the courts are doing right, those in power are doing right or wrong. So all of these personal politics, I also feel like in some way translates into how much implementation, not just in terms of like structural changes, but smaller things. Things that I think most of us get concerned about. Say for instance, like maybe the law and order situation in UP that you spoke about, or maybe instances of custodial torture. So these smaller issues that happen within the system, that I think that structural changes cannot exactly change it, because even if you have like a different structure for law and order and investigation, if they, very interestingly actually, I saw that there was this Netflix documentary recently जिसमें the police wala is like, हमारे पास तो तरीके होते हैं, and I was like, why are you saying that on a Netflix documentary? Like, that's so problematic. As a lawyer, I understand that you shouldn't be saying that, you shouldn't be admitting to it at least on screen, but that's my point. Like, there are people who, and their personal politics. So how do you think that those are areas that we can bring reformation in?
Yes, the policemen are not moralists. And as I said at the very beginning, a lot of officers start with a lot of idealism. But that idealism starts evaporating once you see the grim realities around you. And I have seen in my own career, I have seen some very bright officers, outstanding officers. But then I went outside the state, and when I come back and I said, no, वो तो बड़ा अच्छा अफसर है. नहीं साहब आप क्या कह रहे हैं, वो तो जब अच्छा अफसर था तब रहा होगा, अब तो उसकी हालत मत पूछिए. I mean, they lose, they sort of shed their idealism. They probably think it is best to swim with the current, and because otherwise you are a loner, you don't get support from your own officers. And it's a fact, you don't get support from your own department, and your friends desert you, and you're just nowhere. When I was thrown out as DGP UP, can you believe it? Of course, within 24 hours, I moved to my private residence. Within 24 hours. My granddaughter was running high fever. I said, nothing doing, we have to move. We have to move. And my house was placed under surveillance, which I was told later, कि कौन इनसे मिलने जा रहा है, कौन नहीं मिल रहा है, इनके ऊपर watch रखी जाए. Hardly anybody was coming to me, except some people who were very devoted to me. They would come, and they would, but their numbers were very small. I mean, I had gone into a cocoon, so to say. Just staying inside the house, not going outside the boundaries of because I had run out of political favor. In fact, it was political disapproval and anger and distrust and sort of dislike. So I said, all right, ठीक है, जो है वो है. I mean, if they are putting me under surveillance, so be it. I have nothing to hide. I haven't done anything wrong. But then that time, I said it was one of the most traumatic periods of my life. So, but as I said, it requires a very strong moral fiber to retain that idealism till the end of your career. Generally, I have seen people sort of shedding their idealism, layers of it, every 5-10 years, and then becoming more. They think it's better to be worldly wise than to be very idealistic. So then all kinds of things happen, and then all kinds of jugaad, all kinds of fabrications, all kinds of adjustments. I mean, there are a lot of things are. Sometimes I wonder whether police is worse than what it was in 1902, because I told you the 1902 report, when they said policemen are not trusted, this, that. Then there are two things which have happened which were not there in 1902. Police has been politicized. In fact, the entire bureaucracy has been politicized. In fact, I can say to the credit of police, that in police there is a much stronger and a vocal demand for change and reform than in the Indian Administrative Service. So administrative services are also completely politicized. This was not there then. Another thing which has happened is that politics has become criminalized, which is even worse. The dividing line between politicians and criminals has got blurred. That dividing line, the politician very easily, the criminal very easily crosses, and he is accepted as a political boss. And then the moral think that your moral compass, that moral compass disappears. And then you have, what was his name? Paramjeet Singh, Commissioner of Police, Mumbai. I'm giving example from this state, sort of acting as extortion agent for the state government. The point is, I mean, both of them are wrong. I mean, the Home Minister in demanding 100 crores was wrong. But why did this Commissioner of Police not have the guts to say that, sorry, this is not my job and I will not do it? आपका क्या नुकसान होगा? You will be thrown out as Commissioner of Police, that's all. They'll find somebody else who will commit dacoity on their behalf. So be it. You still draw your salary. But when you are also part of the same transaction, as it is, they say, when you are also sharing the booty, then you say, all right, I'll collect 100 crores on your behalf and maybe 5 crores would be siphoned for my own benefit. When you don't have that moral fiber, then you fall into that kind of trap. And many officers are falling into that kind of trap. जैसे कि साहब जब नौकरी इसी तरह करनी है तो ठीक है, इसी तरह करते हैं. सरकार यही चाहती है तो हम क्या करें? सरकार चाहती है लूटो तो लूटो, हम भी लूटेंगे, उसमें थोड़ा लूट में हम भी बहती गंगा में हम भी हाथ धोते रहेंगे, जैसे कहा मुहावरा है. I mean, it all depends on, as I said, it all depends on your character. It all depends on your character and how much you are prepared to sacrifice. How much are you prepared to suffer? I mean, I tell, when I address young officers, I say that, look, you analyze the graph of officers who were true to their word, true to their conscience, and you analyze the graph of officers who thought it's best to swim with the current. Yes, they do go up suddenly, and then they suddenly go in the dumps also. Graph may not go very high up or in a steep gradient, but it will keep on moving. Maybe you are on a plateau sometime, then you thoda sa upar badhega, but you will be going upwards. And you will sleep in comfort, you will have no burden on your conscience, no weight on your conscience, and that is something which, but people generally are more attracted by the prospects of immediate material gain. That's a problem with the people. I mean, to some extent it has always been there, but I think it is becoming more glaring now.
We'll open it to the readers now. Yeah.
So you spoke about fading idealism, but I think I speak for all of us here when I say that, meeting someone as idealistic as yourself, as a representative of the police force, it's very heartening, it's delightful for all of us, I'm sure. And if there's one thing we can take back, I think, from what Sir said, is I think we can all learn to be a little more uncompromising. I think that's a lovely lesson to learn from you. We will open it now for question and answers, but Sir will also be available for book signing and one-on-one interactions later. So I would request all of you to have a gander at the screen as to what your questions can, the guidelines of your questions can be like, so we can have a lively, pertinent question and answer session. So the forum is open now for questions for Sir.
So I was saying that there's an antagonistic relationship between the police system and the citizens. So there's no bottoms-up support for reforms in terms of, it's not a voting idea, it's in the manifesto during election, but it's not part of demand from the public saying we want better police. Or secondly, unlike any other government department, police departments have not been able to extract concessions in terms of better working conditions, better living conditions. Whereas if you look at any other unions, government employees or public sector unions, they do much better. Why is this lack of bottoms-up reform in the system?
Bottoms-up reform is also part of the agenda. If you go through see, when I talk of police reforms, let me make it clear, what do I understand by police reform? Police reforms do not mean only the Supreme Court mandated reforms. Police reforms cover the entire spectrum of suggestions which would go to improve the working of the police. That is what I mean by police reforms. So, I mean, there is a bottoms-up approach also, and the need to change the attitude of the policeman towards the common citizen. That is very essential. And but unfortunately, there are so many things linked up which are not giving acceleration to this effort of ours, because number one, training facilities are very poor. Training facilities are very poor, and officers and men are hardly sent for training. The report prepared by Common Cause on the status of policing, they say something like 5% or so. That is 5%, 5 or 7% they have said. That is the percentage of people who were given in-service training during the last 5 years. Now, on paper, actually, there was a provision. I remember when I was superintendent of police, there was a provision that every constable has to undergo training during the course of the year. But now training is completely at a default, completely going by default. And so far it was limited to the police, that policemen are not being trained. Now, unfortunately, even in the Central Armed Police Forces, by which I mean the BSF and the CRPF, even there we find that training is not happening, with the result that their standards are also going down. So training is absolutely a must. And in the defense, they insist on training. And their training institutions are very prestigious institutions. Whereas in police, if you are sent to a training institution or if you are posted to a training institution, that means you have been dumped there. You have been punished there. And the infrastructure is not there, books are not there. And when you have a group of people who are sort of disgruntled, unhappy, frustrated, running the training institutions, then naturally they can't inspire and motivate the people who are. So training is a very dark area for us, and that needs to improve. It has been repeatedly harped upon, but somehow the problem is with the state governments. The state governments do not understand the importance of it. Even the central government doesn't understand the importance of it. And when it comes to the CAPF, the Central Armed Police Forces, they are repeatedly told, but they know, oh, this much force is available, oh, isko bhejo yahan pe, itna bhejo. Whether that force is suited for that kind of operation where it is being sent, this is not considered. Whether that force was doing training and then is being withdrawn, that is also not considered. They just issue a fiat, a diktat, force bhejo, and then the force has to be mobilized. And these days, as I said, officers, generally the officers are, yes sir, yes sir. Yeah, what is this yes sir? Say that we don't have, these men are doing training, sorry I can't send them. This culture, this yes sir culture is destroying the forces. They think it's an order from the government and it has to be complied with. No, it's an order from the government, yes. But as I said, I never carried out those orders which I thought are against public interest or against police interest or against the societal interest. I just don't carry out those orders. अब क्या कर लोगे मेरा, निकाल दोगे, निकाल दो. Don't apply Fevicol to a chair. I was always prepared to leave. I was always prepared to leave. You keep me for what I am. And they needed me also, because I had gone, when I went to UP, I had gone with such a reputation that people were overawed by me, that here is a man who has done Nagaland, he has done Assam, he has done Punjab, he has done Kashmir, and now that he has come to UP, pata nahi kaisa aadmi hai. So they held me in a lot of awe, so they tolerated a lot of things from me. But ultimately they also said, oh ho gaya, enough is enough, this man should be thrown out. So that happens, but so that's how it is.
What do you make of the Prime Minister's proposal for a single uniform for the entire police force?
I think, frankly, I was rather disappointed by the Prime Minister's announcement about a single uniform for the uniform is already there, it's khaki across the country. Shades of it may be different because you don't get the same shade everywhere. I mean, you have to depend on what shade is available in the market. You can't be, and there can't be one factory producing, people, do you really, do you know what is the strength of the Indian police? It's more than 2 million. And 1 million you have Central Armed Police Forces. So more than 3 million is the current strength of the police and the Central Armed Police Forces. Now, who is going to produce the same brand of khaki for 30 lakh people? I don't know which factory will be able to produce that much. And then India is a huge country. So, but I mean, I don't disagree with what the Prime Minister has said. The point is, my point is that it doesn't matter if the shade of his khaki is slightly different from the shade of another khaki. So long as it is khaki is all right. What is more important is, how does he function? What is more important is, why don't we have the same police act for the entire country? The British had great, the British had greater foresight. They had one police act for the entire country, Act of 1861. It applied across the board. Whereas we are having, जिसे कहते हैं अपनी अपनी डफली, अपना 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 राग, सब लोग अपना अपना ढोल बजा रहे हैं. ये क्या है भाई? This is wrong. And here both the UPA government is to blame and so NDA government is to blame. Both are to blame. Why have you not accepted the Model Police Act drafted by Soli Sorabji? You see, when the question of Model Police Act came, the Model Police Act had been drafted by the National Police Commission, but the Supreme Court said it was drafted long ago, so let there be another act. So we said, all right. So that is the background for the setting up of the Soli Sorabji committee. They called it PADC, Police Act Drafting Committee. It was headed by him. So he produced another minor act, another draft. Now that act should have been adopted by the central government, and they should have sent it to all the states, and they should have insisted on those states where the same party is in power, either by themselves or in alliance with others. At least 10-12 states would have been covered like that. भाई 10-12 स्टेट में ये सारा एक्ट तुम लगाओ, ये हमारी पार्टी पावर में है इसी स्टेट में, यहाँ तुम लगाओ. That would have been possible. The same act would have been passed in all the states. And then they could have incentivized that if you accept this model act, we'll give you so much for modernization, so much for transport, so much for communication. And then they would have said, भाई ठीक है इसी को ले लो, हमें इतना पैसा और मिल जाएगा. Neither the UP thought of doing this, nor the Indian thought of doing it. Why? So what we need is one police act for the country. Something which the British did and which we find ourselves incapable of doing. The uniform to choti baat hai bhai, act ho one, and Prime Minister is saying one nation and so many things he is combining, one nation, one ration card, one nation, one, so many things he has said. What's the problem in one nation, one police? That's my point. That is more important than uniform.
So basically optics nahi kaam pe. Visibility ka optics nahi. What you're working on is more important. Sorry. There's another question there.
My question is, there were so many ups and downs in your career and your life. So what were the tools, the techniques which you used to use to calm yourself and to relax yourself during these phases, during these difficult phases?
I think it's your own discipline, yani your own attitude to life, your own philosophy of life. आपका जीवन दर्शन क्या है? My life philosophy was very simple. I have to follow the right path, and if necessary, at some stage, I'll leave it. So what is the problem?
So you used to just remind yourself that
I was always prepared to leave. If worse comes to worse, I would leave the job. And as far as earning my bread, that is no problem. I can always earn my bread. I have that much in my coconut. There'll be no problem. Earning is no problem. और हमें क्या? My philosophy of life is very simple. भाई क्या? बच्चों को अच्छी शिक्षा मिल जाए, हमें अगर हमें दोनों टाइम की रोटी हो जाए, बस that's good enough.
Actually, I wanted to ask that what is the biggest problem that has to be prioritized and solved ASAP?
What is the biggest problem which has to be
solved quickly
as soon as possible.
As soon as possible in the police.
I mean, as a police.
Yeah. In the current problem. What is the biggest current problem?
For that, read the book. Current problem in recent times, which is the most pressing problem that the police needs to solve.
Most pressing problem are, I would say, the separatist and secessionist movements in different parts of the country. See, these have taken a heavy toll of our economy, of our energy, of our resources, of our time. The Northeast erupted in rebellion in mid-50s, 1954 to be precise. The Naga rebellion started. Then, of course, Mizoram, Manipur, Tripura, they all went up in flames. So from 54, it is now how many years? 70 years, right? Then the next long problem is Naxalbari. Naxalbari starts in 1967. That is also more than 50 years. Kashmir problem has been with us since independence, but it is in the 90s that problem really became serious. So that has also taken 30 years. So 30 years, 50 years, and almost 60, 70 years, right? These problems have dragged on for too long. And these problems have taken so much of your time, energy, resources, money, whatnot. Thousands of people have died. According to an estimate made by a think tank, we lose 7% of our GDP. In 2020, we lost 7% of GDP in just tackling these internal security threats. So these, and I believe that, you see, I believe that there is no problem which cannot be solved. That is my conviction. The point is, do you have the political will? Do you have the honesty of intention? Do you have the right strategy? It is only when you don't have this that these problems continue to drag on. Now, we have been independent now for more than 7 decades. We have not cared to enunciate our national security doctrine to date. Why? I have raised this question umpteen times. I was member of the National Security Advisory Board. There also I raised this question. But nobody would listen. Nobody would listen. You don't have a national security doctrine, you don't have a strategic vision, you don't have a long-term policy, and you tackle these problems depending on the perception of the people in power at that time. Now that's not on. National security is much too serious a matter to be left to the politician in power at a given point of time. You require long-term planning for it. And all big powers, they have their national security doctrines. But we have not cared to formulate ours. I won't go into details, but to give one example, why is the rebellion in the Maoist belt not getting sorted out? I could speak on this subject for 45 minutes, but I'll speak just for 30 seconds only. Because the states have outsourced this problem to the center. It is a problem of the states. Until the state police comes forward to say that it is my battle and we are going to fight it out, the problem will never be solved. I was part of the solution in Punjab. I was defending the borders, Mr. Gill was defending the hinterland, and Mr. Rivero was issuing the policies from Chandigarh. All the three of us were working together. But we worked to a plan. And terrorism was wiped out.
So
Go
ahead.
Sir, I had a question for you. So you said that policemen are not moralists. Though I agree with that, but what do we do about moral policing?
What do you do about moral policing? No, moral policing is different.
No. What do we do about moral policing by policemen? How do we do? Because as a young person, I've faced this undue moral policing. Whereas the law is objective, right? The law doesn't have any stance on moral issues. So how do you tackle that?
Moral policing should not be, firstly, it should not be a pejorative term. But somehow it has acquired some kind of a, not a good thing, moral policing. It's very difficult to generalize. I would say moral policing is good so long as it's really moral policing. But moral policing doesn't mean that, the way they are doing in Iran, for example, forcing you to wear hijab and women don't want to. So how the line of morality is to be drawn, I think that's a very ticklish question, and that would require a lot of discussion and debate. But moral policing by itself should not be a pejorative term. I think we do require, after all, do you want immoral policing? I'll put it that way. As it is so immoral.
Of the system. So I don't think it helps, others and the minorities feel better or live better.
I think in some ways moral policing is social censure basically, and it should not be a prerogative of the police at all.
I think it should not be done to an extent where your daily life gets affected, but you can't just give them a complete license also. So, I think it will have to be discussed from situation to situation. Very difficult to generalize.
So, here. So how real is the threat of urban Naxals, and what do you think about it? This trending term called urban Naxals, and that it's a threat, and like the Prime Minister yesterday mentioned, Honorable Prime Minister mentioned that the people with gun and pen are both are the threats. Do you really think, because you are now somebody who has written a book, who is an intellectual in himself, do you think the pen can ever be a threat to the country's security?
You see, the urban Naxals are people who justify the Naxalite ideology by their intellect, by what they write. Now, if you look at the Naxalite, now you will have to analyze the Naxalite movement itself. You see, I have followed this movement from 69 onwards. My book, A Naxalite Movement, by the way, it is published in India, it is published in France, it is also published in USA. In French, it has been published in French also. See, the first batches of Naxal leaders were really men of idealism. I knew them personally. I interacted with many of them personally. In fact, I had to deal with the Naxal problem as a young officer. I mean, I had just joined service. And I felt that there is a degree of legitimacy in the movement. That is the time when I felt. But Naxal movement of 60s and 70s was one thing, and Naxal movement today is entirely different. Now it has become criminalized. And now people at the top, if you look into their antecedents and background, they are leading cushy lives somewhere, their children are studying abroad, this, that, and they expect their cadres to lead a very austere life and go to the jungle and fight it out and suffer all that. And what is their objective? I mean, they have no plan really for future. It is destructive. They will destroy your schools, they will destroy your telecommunication network, and they will destroy your roads, your whatever they can. But they have no constructive agenda really. It's a very nihilistic and destructive approach that they have. And today, considering that, I would say whatever inputs the urban Naxals, the intellectual Naxals are giving, I think they are making things more difficult, for the government, and they are misguiding the people. The Naxal movement has, I would say, has got derailed. I mean, people like, I have admiration, I have no hesitation in saying I have admiration for people like Charu Mazumdar, Kanu Sanyal, Jangal Santhal, or Nagabhushan Patnaik. But the present leadership, that absolutely, it's difficult to talk to them. And their attitude is criminal and destructive. And so urban Naxals, I think they are giving grist to the mill of people who are on the path of destruction, which is not a good thing. So urban Naxals are also a threat to the Indian society today. But but then the other question is the question of, say, economic inequality. Why is economic inequality getting exacerbated in the country? The latest report which I said, the largest number of people below poverty line in the world are today in India. Yes, we have uplifted a lot of people also. Yes, you have some questions. People of Korea.
Yeah, they serve their country for at least 2 years. Mandatory enlisting.
So, do you think that this should be applied in India too?
Well, on principle it sounds good. Why should you not serve the country for 2 years? Yeah. For doctors, sometime back, I remember when Narayan was the health minister, he made it mandatory that you have to serve in the villages for so many years. But the doctors are not willing to go to the rural areas. In fact, most of the people would not be willing to do the kind of service which you have in mind. Most of the people would not be willing to do.
No, actually, I think from what I understand, and this is entirely based on BTS, but I think Korea has mandatory military enlisting because they are South Korea, because they are constantly at war with like North Korean borders.
Talking of service in the military?
So, yes, so Korea that is what
No,
South
you're talking
Korea
of
has, right?
social service or service in the military?
Yes, it's not social service, it's military
service.
enlistment. Yes.
Not a bad idea, not a bad idea, but point is, can we implement that in such a huge country with such a massive population? We will not know where to find the instructors for such a large population. But not a bad idea. It could be implemented if possible.
There's a question, last question.
Hello,
if
sir.
Not, if not compulsory, at least whosoever is willing to start with. Yes, young man.
So there is a increasing mental health issues in CAPFs. So officers are killing their colleagues and they're shooting themselves. So do we need a mental health policy or program for them as well?
Please repeat your question.
So there is an increasing trend in mental health issues in CAPFs.
Mental health issues
Yes, sir.
in CAPF.
Officers are killing their colleagues and then shooting themselves. So do we need a mental health course for them or a policy formulation for that?
I don't think you need a mental health course. I would much rather say you need better management. Better management. A lot of these issues crop up because people don't get leave to go home, even when there is a pressing problem at home, somebody's marriage, somebody's illness, which has to be attended to. Because the deployment is so much, and government is deploying even the training companies. So there is problem in releasing a lot of people on leave. I think better management, better administration is what really matters. I mean, we never had that problem. I mean, and there should be, actually, one of the major problems with the forces today is what I say, a chasm between the officers and the men. We were told that, look, you are the my-bap of the people under your command, and you should look upon them as your children, who are to be taken care of, and who are to be, I mean, whose welfare should be uppermost in your mind. These days, many officers are more bothered about their own comfort, their own career progression, their own perks, than the welfare of the men. So I think good administration, if you have good administration, if you have good officers who look after the men, these problems would not arise. There is something, I mean, all is not well with the CAPFs also. I mean, all has not been well with the police, but the way CAPF is expanding and the way it is being utilized and misutilized and the way training companies are deployed, I mean, I would say all is not well with the CAPFs also, and that is why we have these problems. Of course, they are trying to introduce yoga courses and meditation and all that. But if you handle them properly, the yoga courses वगैरह कोई ज़रूरत ही नहीं पड़ेगी. There is so much talk about human rights. Look, at least about 12 years of my life I spent in operations. मैंने तो कोई human rights का कोई course नहीं attend किया था. पर मेरे खिलाफ कभी human rights का आरोप भी नहीं लगा. Because you should have certain ingrained values that I will not kill somebody in cold blood. And that value you should be able to impart to your men. So unfortunately, a lot of these things are not being addressed in the manner they should be. I would say good administration, people with values, good leadership, good camaraderie, good bond harmony between the officers and the men, good bonding between the officers and the men. That's not happening. People say, you can't rely, these days officers say, when I address them, so you can't rely on the subordinates, they are very disloyal. At a crucial time, they ditch you, they are not there. I don't know what kind of leadership you are giving. I have also commanded the force. I mean, in Punjab, when I was there, Punjab was burning at that time. And every time I went out of my campus, I knew that I could face any situation. I could be killed, I could be ambushed, I could be fired at anywhere. But I knew that I have a pilot and a gypsy, and all of them trained first-class soldiers, and I knew that each one of them would lay down his life before they are able to attack me. That was the degree of bonding. I looked after them, they looked after me. They looked upon me as somebody who has to be protected even at the cost of his own life. तो सवाल एक बॉन्डिंग इतनी ज़बरदस्त थी अफसरों में और जवानों में, वो बॉन्डिंग अब ख़त्म हो रही है. अब कहते हैं अफसर है मरे, अफसर साला मरे, हम अपना देखें. ये ऐसी सिचुएशन आई क्यों? इसके लिए दोषी आप हैं.
Sir, we'll just expand to one more question.
One more question.
Sir, just one question, Jain sir. We are facing many problems that we are performing many functions like investigation, like bandobast, like day and night duties, and all kind of work we are performing. Is it that discussed in this book? Is it discussed in this book?
It is very much in my book. I say that an average police officer, according to the status of policing report, is putting in 14 hours of work a day.
Yes,
This has to stop. You can't expect a man. I mean, and the Police Act of 1861 says a police officer is on duty around the clock. I mean, what is this absurdity? Round the clock मतलब क्या है? 24 घंटे आप कैसे ड्यूटी देंगे भाई? Day after day, year after year, week after week. So there must be a system of weekly off. And I have said to start with, at least you have a 12-hour schedule and then bring it down to 8 hours. That is how they should gradually bring your duties to 8-hour shifts. और थाने में 3 शिफ्ट होने चाहिए, आप 8 घंटे काम करिए, उसके बाद बाकी 16 घंटे आपके होने चाहिए.
Last 2 months I have not taken any weekly off, sir.
No, you don't get, everybody knows you don't get any leave on holidays. You don't spend the festivals with your kith and kin. I mean, these are serious problems.
I think the book does discuss about how it's often a thankless job. I think the book to some extent does discuss about how on a personal level it can be a very thankless job.
We are very thankful and grateful for this session, I think, because it also doubled up as life guidelines, not just answer questions about police life, but you also laid down these guidelines that we can actually live our lives by. I would just like to tell the readers here, it is our privilege to have amongst us Shri Gajanan Rajmane also, who is the DCP Zone 3. And I'm sure all of you are aware about his exemplary courage and his involvement with social causes, but he's also a writer who's about to publish his book very soon. I would request Mr. Rajmane to give the author an artwork made by Alag Angle artist Vishalakshi Rakhade, a class 12 student from Yavatmal, Vidarbha. I would request Rajmane sir to please speak a few words about how literature helps a police officer.
Good evening, Jai Hind. Actually, Honorable CP sir was supposed to be here as a guest, but he could not come for this program because of his prior commitments. Prakash, Singh sir, Honorable, actually उनके सामने खड़े रहना ही himself is a Prakash, is a light for Indian police. छोटा DCP हूँ, सिटी का एक पार्ट को संभाल रहा हूँ, लेकिन मुझे बहुत दिल से खुशी हो रही कि कोई तो सोच रहा है कि पुलिस में रिफॉर्म हो जाए. बुक पब्लिश हो रहा है उसके ऊपर. एक्चुअली सर, आई एम फीलिंग वेरी प्राउड कि जैसे शरीर पर, जिस्म पर वर्दी चढ़ती है तो उसका एक नशा अलग सा ही नशा रहता है. मैं ये बुक से टाइटल है, टाइटल से ज़्यादा मैंने बुक पढ़ा भी नहीं है, लेकिन टाइटल से मेरी समझ ऐसी आई कि इट इज़ पुलिस वर्दी हो, ये पीपल के लिए हो, न कि वो पॉलिटिकल लोग है जिसका ये यूज़ करते हैं उसके लिए न हो. मैंने अभी 10-12 साल में सर जो भी सर्विस दी है, एक्चुअली पुलिस बिजनेस या पुलिस प्रोफेशन ये नहीं होता, ये सर्विस होती है, पुलिस सर्विस. ये महाराष्ट्र पुलिस सेवा हो या इंडियन पुलिस सेवा हो, उसमें सर मैंने पाया है कि सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट इमरजेंसी सर्विस बोलते हैं. हाइपोथेटिकल अगर कंडीशन ले ले हम, महाराष्ट्र में, महाराष्ट्र स्टेट में हम 15 मिनट अगर रुकते हैं पुलिस काम करने का और आदेश लाते हैं ऊपर से कि इस 15 मिनट में पब्लिक को जो भी करना है करो, हम कोई भी ऑफेंस रजिस्टर नहीं करेंगे, तो मुझे लगता है मुंबई पुलिस, पुणे, मुंबई, ठाणा, नागपुर का पूरा ट्रैफिक केओस हो जाएगा. दिल में जिनके जिनके बदले की भावना है चाकू पिस्टल लेकर जाएंगे किसी को मारने के लिए, कहाँ पर रेप होंगे, बड़े बड़े ज्वेलर्स लूटे जाएंगे, या जो भी है बहुत सारे क्राइम होंगे। तो 15 मिनट अगर पुलिस रुकती है तो ये सब होगा, होता भी है बहुत जगह। तो ये सर्विस जो है कि कितनी इम्पोर्टेंट है। 12 साल में बाहर था, बाहर जैसे बहुत सारे लोग हैं कि पुलिस के बारे में सिर्फ पढ़ते हैं, देखते हैं, मीडिया में फिल्म्स देखते हैं, और उस पर पुलिस कैसी होगी वो परसेप्शन होता है, बहुत बार परसेप्शन होता है। लेकिन मैं जब पुलिस नहीं था और अब पुलिस हूँ तो मैंने पाया है सर, मैं अगर मेरे 100 अमलदार को लाता हूँ और उनका मेडिकल टेस्ट करता हूँ, मैंने ये किया भी है, 80% लोग एबनॉर्मल होते हैं। किसी को डायबिटीज़ होती है, हार्ट के प्रॉब्लम होते हैं। मेरा पहला पोस्टिंग यहाँ पर आया तो HQ में था, तो हर साल में एवरेज 50 लोग अपने रिटायर होने के पहले मरते हैं, हार्ट अटैक से, या पैरालिसिस होता है, या और सारे ऐसे प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं। उसके कारण एक आध अमलदार हमारा, उनको आप पूछेंगे कि जैसे विजय ने बताया, हर वीक में वो हर 7 के 7 दिन नाइट करता रहता है, 8वें दिन फिर वो डे करता रहता है। ऐसी ड्यूटीज होती है। वरना रिफॉर्म का पहला स्टेज वही हो कि मैन पावर जो है हमारी सबसे ज़्यादा बढ़ाई जाए। जैसे आज नागपुर शहर में 10 DCP की जरूरत है, तो है ही 4 ही है। तो ये है सर, मैंने नक्सल एरिया में काम किया है, बहुत सारा वहाँ सक्सेस भी मिला है। 21 नक्सलों को अरेस्ट किया था, बहुत सारे ब्लास्टिंग निकाले थे, सरेंडर भी बहुतों को किया है। अभी जैसे विषय आ गया तो 2 शब्द में, माना मैं जानता हूँ, मैं तो बहुत छोटा हूँ, लेकिन 2 शब्द में नक्सलिज्म क्या है या अर्बन नक्सल क्या है, 2 वाक्यों में अगर आपको बताना है तो नक्सलों को करना क्या है, माओवाद है। तो माओवाद की पहली स्टेज है कि उनको क्रांति लानी है, और क्रांति से साम्यवादी राष्ट्र को लाना है। माना लोकशाही उनको नहीं चाहिए, बेसिक उनका क्या है कि साम्यवाद राष्ट्र को लाना है। उसके लिए क्या करना है कि आप बंदूक हाथ में ले लो, और जहां छिपने के लिए जगह है वहां आपको क्या करो, आपका एरिया बनाओ। वहां पर आपको क्या करना है, एक चीज कि लोगों को जमाना है, वेपन्स इकट्ठा करने हैं, पहले गोरिल्ला प्रकार से आप करो, क्या करो, लड़ो, सरकार से लड़ो, और उसका कन्वर्जन है वो मिलिट्री में आपको करना है। मिलिट्री में वो कन्वर्जन होने के लिए क्या करना पड़ता है आपको, तो मैन पावर लगती है और वेपन्स लगते हैं। ये सब है, मैंने खुद इंट्रोगेट किया है। ये सब 3री, 4वी, 5वीं, 7वीं ऐसे पढ़े हुए, सब ज्यादा से ज्यादा 8वीं तक, ये सब नक्सल जो जंगल में घूमते वो है, उनके हाथ में बंदूक है, ब्लास्टिंग लगाते हैं, पुलिसों को मारते हैं, पुलिस भी उनको मारते हैं, ये चलता है। लेकिन इनका ब्रेन वॉश करने वाला वो जो ब्रेन है ना, वो सब कहाँ होता है, शहर में होता है। उसको ही अर्बन नक्सल कहते हैं। और उनका काम क्या है कि एक दिन अपने भारत में ऐसा लाना है कि वहां पर पूरा अराजकता हो, केओस हो, उसमें हमारे जैसे सब पुलिस है, पैरामिलिट्री है, उनको इसमें उनको इन्वॉल्व करना है। और ये जो अराजकता चल रही है, केओस चल रहा है, उसको निपटाने के लिए हमें बिजी करना है। ऐसा एक दिन उनको यहाँ लाना है, और तब तक उनकी तैयार हुई जो जंगल में मिलिट्री है उसको हल्ला करना है, कहा दिल्ली पर, और वहाँ का तिरंगा निकलना है और लाल झंडा लगाना है, और साम्यवाद राष्ट्र की स्थापना होगी। ये सिंपल सा उनका, और ये कब होगा उनको पता नहीं है, और बोलते हैं रिवॉल्यूशन इज इमिनेंट, हो कब भी होगा, 500 साल के बाद भी होगा। तो इसलिए ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि अर्बन नक्सल को जानना हो कि पेन द्वारा जो है ना, माना हमने पाया है कि यहाँ से बहुत लोग आते थे जंगल में, 1 महीना रहते थे, और वो 3री, 4वी, 5वीं पढ़े हुए लोगों का ब्रेन वॉश करते थे, पुस्तक उनको पढ़ने को देते थे। तो वहाँ काम किया। मालेगांव में तो टेररिज्म का ये था, नागपुर में भी यहाँ काम किया। सर कि आप जैसे ऑफिसरों को देखकर हम सर प्रेरित होते हैं, इंस्पिरेशन लेते हैं। रिबोरो साहब सर, उनका आपने नाम लिया, बहुत सारे ऐसे ऑफिसर हैं, 26 अकरा में बहुत सारे काम किए हुए ऑफिसर्स हैं। आज तक अपने पूरे भारत में 55,000 से भी ज़्यादा पुलिस ऑफिसर्स और अमलदार शहीद हुए हैं इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी के लिए। लोगों को पता नहीं है लेकिन हुए हैं इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी। हम बाहर की बॉर्डर भी कवर करते, उसमें भी बहुत सारे शहीद हुए हैं, लेकिन पुलिस भी इसमें सब शहीद हुए हैं। मैं खुद प्राउड फील करता हूँ कि भगवान ने देखो, संविधान में देखो, ये वर्दी हमें दी है। आपसे यही एक प्रकाश लेकर जाएंगे कि लोगों के लिए इस वर्दी का हम यूज़ करते रहेंगे। लोग बहुत सारे समस्या में है, प्रार्थना स्थल जाते हैं, मंदिर जाते हैं या फिर पुलिस के पास जाते हैं, तो हम वही चाहेंगे कि हमारे पास आए हुए लोग ये मंदिर में आए ऐसा फील करें, उनका सेटिस्फैक्शन हो। पुलिस स्टेशन न रहे, पीएस बोलते हैं शॉर्ट फॉर्म में पुलिस स्टेशन को, एक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्वर हो पीएस माना। तो ऐसा करके हम लोगों को समस्या, और ये रिफॉर्म कब होगा नहीं होगा वो पता नहीं, लेकिन हम आपसे प्रेरित होकर जाएंगे और हम पब्लिक के पुलिस बन के रहेंगे। जय हिंद।
Thank you, sir, for those very powerful words. I would now like to call upon our secretary, Mr. Sachin Jagirdar.
Very happy to see some shades of khaki here in the audience. Aditi, you rightly said that the best takeaway that we can take from this session is to become uncompromising. Apart from that, I have another takeaway, and I'm sure you will all agree with that. But before that, I have a couple of confessions to make. The first one is when Pawan suggested this book and this author, and I Googled him, the Wikipedia told me that he's 86. And my instant response to Pawan was that, we shouldn't call him, he will deny anyway. But Pawan said, let him deny, our invitation must go. And Rupa being our partner at the VLF, we reached out to Rupa, and without taking any time, Prakash Singh ji agreed to come here. So apart from what Aditi is taking home, I would like to take home the discipline and the fitness that he has at this age. इनका फ्लाइट भी कैंसिल हुआ तो इन्होंने मुझसे कहा कि यार तुम अभी कहाँ दूसरी फ्लाइट मुझे डाल रहे हो, पुट मी ऑन एनी सुपर फास्ट ट्रेन, आई विल कम बाय ट्रेन ऑल्सो। यहाँ आने के बाद ये आज सुबह रामटेक जाकर आए हुए हैं। मतलब मैं खुद अगर कहीं आऊँ तो मैं आराम कर जाऊँ एक दिन के लिए, बट तो दैट्स वन। अनदर कन्फेशन दैट आई वांट टू मेक इज कि साहब ये किताब बड़ी महंगी लिखी इन्होंने। इट्स वर्थ इट बट इट्स वेरी expensive that way, but don't worry, we have tried to make this lighter for your pockets. As always, as a gesture from VLF, we are extending a discount of ₹100. Crossword has been very generous, and they have extended a discount of ₹150 today for this session, this book. So the book comes to you at about ₹550 today. So don't forget to buy your copy, get it signed, and do read. It's worth the cost of it. So that's another one. As we are coming closer to the festival, I hope you have all marked the calendar. It's 4th and 5th of February 23 that we are having this mega festival. So as we are coming closer, the onus is on us. We need your support financially as well as becoming a volunteer. Do join us. आपको ये काले कपड़ों में कोई दिखेगा, आप बिल्कुल reach out करिए. So as we are coming closer, we have been very fortunate to gather some funds. Some people have come forward, and I would like to take this stage and thank them. The first one is Dr. Deepak Birewarji. He runs his manufacturing company called Inventis in Butibori. It's a state-of-the-art plant, and he's also committed to become a sponsor. In principle, their agreement has been done. They will be on board very soon. The another commitment that we have received is from Dalmia Cement. Hakimuddin Ali has committed to become a sponsor of VLF. So interestingly, both Dr. Birewar and Hakimuddin Ali both are voracious readers, so they understand the pain at our side, so they both have committed to us. Another new kid on the block is the support that we will be receiving from the Toastmasters International. They've also come forward. They have put up their stall. If you are interested, please take a look what they have to offer for you. They've been joined us very soon, this month onwards. Each festival, each session till the festival, you will find their stalls. Please speak to them. Anyone who follows badminton here? Anyone who plays badminton? Right. So you will agree that we have seen a rise of badminton in this country. And that's the next book for you. It's called The Gopichan Effect. Sorry, The Gopichan Factor. And interestingly, in 2020, we reached out to Gopichan. Unfortunately, he couldn't grace this VLF opening ceremony. But this book, Abhijit Kulkarni has written. And आपने अगर नागपुर को ट्रैक किया होगा तो a lot of shuttlers have made great name on the national platform as well as international platform. So this is going to be an interesting discussion. Here we have taken an exception because we normally meet on Saturdays. So this is on a Monday. So please mark your calendar. This is going to be 14th of November. That's a Monday. वो इसलिए है क्योंकि this venue is not available of any Saturdays all the November month, which is a good sign. That tells us that Nagpur is vibrant in that sense, you know. A lot of functions are happening over the weekends in the entire month of November, also in the entire month of December almost. So weekends are blocked. So we had no choice but to go on to Monday. Apart from that, I would like to thank you all. Please join this bandwagon. See you on Monday, 14th November.
Thank you, Sachin. I would like to remind all of you that books are on sale at a discount right outside. And I would also request all our readers to scan the VLF QR code. You can see it on the screen. You can give us our valuable feedback, and if any of you want to volunteer with us, you can just scan the QR code and fill out the form. And do check out the Toastmaster stall right outside the venue. That's it. Happy reading and have a lovely evening. Sir will now sign your books and he can have a one-on-one interaction with you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.